This is Andhra Pradesh, a state in India. It is one of the biggest states in the country and has more than 50 million people. The state has two large rivers and a strong farming industry. However, it also faces two extreme problems: severe floods and extreme droughts, which are unusual to see in the same place. For nearly 100 years, engineers and governments have been trying to build something remarkable to address this critical issue, a gigantic project that would transfer water between flood and drought-prone areas, so there's always the right balance. From a record-breaking barrier to a hydropower plant and sprawling canals, the result of a plan that's been around since the Second World War is now in full swing. As incredible as it appears, however, it's been tough going. Natural disasters, political clashes, and land acquisition challenges have set this project back decades. What started out as the lifeline of the region has at times looked dead and buried. Now, though, all hands are on deck to finish a build that's already been making some serious waves. Andhra Pradesh. Extending for almost 1,000 kilometers along India's southeast coast is Andhra Pradesh. A leading producer of rice and tobacco, the state is highly dependent on the weather. In a tropical monsoon climate like this, however, atmospheric conditions can be extreme. Across the region, almost 800,000 hectares of land experience regular flooding. That's an area 5 times as big as London, and in the last 2 decades, things have gotten worse. 2024 saw floods so devastating, dozens of lives were sadly lost. Meanwhile, there are severe droughts to deal with too. For districts further to the west have seen years of sparse rainfall, leading to a decline in crop yields and a lack of drinking water. So, we've got one place where there's a surplus of H2O and another where it's in short supply, all within the same state. If only there was some way to balance it out. Polavaram Project. Enter the Polavaram Project, stretching for more than 3.5 kilometers across the Godavari, India's second longest river. It will provide 720,000 acres of land with much-needed irrigation, stand as a powerful flood defense, and generate a huge amount of power for the area. This incredible new infrastructure will effectively control this key section of the river. With it, water can be transferred out when the levels get too high towards areas that don't have enough. There are several parts to the project, each of them massive, and we'll start by looking at the one that's most easily visible, the spillway. More than 50 meters high, it's an immense barrier equipped with 48 hydraulic gates that can let water pass through if necessary, like when flooding is imminent. And because these disasters can get pretty intense, particularly around the Godavari, planners haven't taken any chances. Spillway stats. The structure is built to withstand and protect against the biggest floods possible in the region, the kind that would only be expected once a millennium. Its discharge capacity of 5 million cusecs is higher than any other spillway on Earth. In case you need reminding, a cusec is a unit of measuring water equal to 1 cubic foot per second. Measuring just over 1,100 meters horizontally, it's the largest spillway in the world, even beating the one on the Three Gorges Dam in China. Another record was broken during its construction, which had nothing to do with its length. In 2019, 32,000 cubic meters of concrete were poured in 24 hours. No other project had ever deposited so much of the material in such a short space of time. One feature that makes this different from most spillways is the unusual-looking structure that's been built to one side of it, the fish ladder. With a total length of more than 250 meters, it allows fish to continue swimming upstream to their breeding grounds during the monsoon season when water levels get very high. Before any work could start on the spillway though, an enormous channel had to be dug out of the riverbank. This created an entirely new watercourse where the flow can be controlled with those moving gates before it's allowed to pass back into the Godavari. As for the dam itself, which is yet to properly begin construction, it will span almost 2.5 kilometers across the river, roughly parallel to the spillway. Made from a mixture of compacted earth and rock, it's being constructed in 2 phases up to a height of 45 meters. The dam will sit on top of a concrete diaphragm wall built into the ground. Its job is to give the dam stability from all the water pressure sitting behind it while ensuring there are no leaks. But there was a big problem with it. In 2019, a huge flood hit the region, causing water to surge right up to the wall, washing some of it away. The damage was so bad that the government opted to start again rather than try to repair it. Work on that is currently underway and needs to be done by November 2025. Now, building a dam like this can only be done in a dry area, which is why two cofferdams have been put in above and below where the new dam will go. These are supposed to stop water from getting in during construction, which is exactly what happened in 2019. To be fair, they were only partially built then and have since been completed. The impact. Once finished, the dam will help to form a new reservoir as well as direct water to the spillway on its journey down to the Bay of Bengal. But that's not the only route that it can take. A pair of giant canals will enable water to be sent east to reservoirs 180 kilometers away and west to the Krishna River. Yes, the project will also see the second and seventh longest rivers in India joined together. The two endpoints of these new canals sit close to some of the state's worst drought hotspots, which are mostly to the west, past the Krishna. And yet, not everyone else is convinced that damming the river will be beneficial to them. Concerns have been raised that several villages in nearby Odisha are at risk of flooding once the project completes due to backwater flowing upstream. Although solutions have been proposed, such as building an extra embankment and giving compensation, an agreement between the local governments has not yet been reached. Hydropower. Finally, there's the 960 megawatts hydro plant that's being constructed right next to the main dam. Because if you're going to have all that water rushing around, you might as well try and harness some of its power. Despite construction of this being in the early stages, the holes for the penstocks, 150 meters long and 9 meters in diameter, are already clearly visible. A penstock is basically a tunnel that takes water from a reservoir to a turbine, where the electricity is generated. There's a staggering amount of effort going into this scheme, so you can begin to understand why it's not been a straightforward process. But most wouldn't have expected it to take almost a century to get where it is today, still years away from completion. The Polavaram project was originally conceived in the 1940s when India was still part of the British Empire. However, it wasn't until 1980 that the foundation stone was laid, and then work didn't properly start until 2004. The next few years were mostly spent on the design, land acquisition, and getting approvals from multiple government departments, which took a lot longer than planned. Another decade passed before actual construction began at the main site. It had just been given national project status by India's central government and a target finish date of 2018. But as you can see from this recent footage, that deadline was missed by a long way. The problems. The question, then, is what's caused the project to veer so far off course overall when some aspects, like the pouring of concrete, seem to be going smoothly? Well, it's a combination of things. Firstly, acquiring all the land has been difficult, and it's not hard to see why when you consider the impact on the local population. Unfortunately, to establish a project that will benefit millions, others have made big sacrifices. Whole communities have been relocated because their homes stood in the way of the construction or the new bodies of water being created. We're talking about at least 200,000 people. Organizing permanent new places to live for so many individuals has not been easy, especially when around half are from tribes that have lived in the area for generations. Vast areas of forest are being submerged in order to build this new infrastructure, and there have been those disputes with neighboring states as well. Thirdly, changes in local government haven't exactly helped matters. Rival parties have been quick to blame each other for the lack of headway. After his recent re-election, Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu claimed his predecessor oversaw progress of less than 4% in his 5 years in office. Finally, the main contractor has been changed twice. Mega Engineering and Infrastructures Ltd. is now in charge of the construction, but the fact they haven't been from the beginning has caused delays. These factors, along with inflation, complying with new environmental regulations, and changes to the design and scope of the project, have had an impact on the cost, too. When construction began more than 20 years ago, the estimate was $1.5 billion. The latest total is around $3.5 billion, but at one point, it was more than $6 billion. Now, the pressure is on to wrap things up once and for all. In late 2024, Naidu declared the project must be completed by 2027, with Phase 1 of the dam finished no later than October 2026. At a media briefing, the state's Minister for Water Resources said his boss had made it clear there should not be any deviation from the plan, not even 1 hour. Conclusion. With this strict new target in place, hopefully, the people of Andhra Pradesh will soon see the completion of this critical scheme that's been going on for far too long. A piece of new infrastructure this large and complicated was always going to be difficult to deliver, but the Polavaram project has at times been more of a liability than a lifeline. But when it does eventually cross the finish line and those first floods and droughts hit the region, we'll know whether it's been worth the wait. Don't forget we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic Lego subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the Definitive Video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed.